41. The impact of exposure to violent video games has not been studied as extensively as the impact of exposure to TV or movie violence, the researchers write in Psychological Science in the Public Interest. However, on the whole, the results reported for video games to date are very similar to those obtained in the investigations of TV and movie violence. Among the effects of violent game playing are increases in physiological arousal and physically aggressive behavior, such as hitting, kicking, and pulling clothes or hair. Studies also have found a reduction in helpful behavior among youths exposed to violent video games. Males tend to prefer action-oriented video games involving shooting, fighting, sports, action-adventure, fantasy role-playing, and strategy, according to the Michigan State Survey. Females prefer classic board games, trivia quizzes, puzzles, and arcade games. Electronic game playing gets young people involved with technologies and opens up opportunities in high-paying tech careers, notes communications professor Bradley Greenberg of Michigan State. 42. It is believed that these opportunities accrue to boys because they spend more time working with electronic games and computers, says Greenberg. If girls become more involved with technology at an early age, it is likely that the interest in technology will continue into the work world. If females do become more involved in technology fields, including game development, they may create less violent games that promote cooperation rather than aggression. Video games are in 80% of U.S. homes with children. They generated $6 billion in 2000 and $11 billion by 2003. All indications are that the industry will continue to grow at a healthy clip, says Greenberg. The emerging market is for games designed more with girls in mind that engage them for longer periods of time and force them to investigate more the technology behind the games. The next frontier involves transferring video game technology to educational settings and using the young people's fascination with the games to involve them more with innovative teaching technologies. Until that day comes, however, more awareness is needed of the impact of violent games on young people's behavior, Anderson and his colleagues conclude. 43. Beware of those who deliberately use aspects of the truth to deceive you and others. When someone tells you something that is true, but intentionally leaves out important information that should be included for full comprehension on your part to take place, they can create a false impression. For example, an acquaintance might tell you, "I just won $100 in the state lottery, and it was fantastic when I took that $1 ticket back to the store and turned it in for $100. This woman's a winner, right? Maybe, maybe not. In fact, you later learn that she had purchased not one ticket, but instead 200 for this specific lottery, and only one of these a winner. Eventually, you realize this woman, who you thought was lucky or fortunate, is, in fact, a huge loser. Although she didn't say anything false, she clearly left out important information and likely did so on purpose. That's called a half-truth, which is not technically a lie, but it's just as dishonest. 44. Untrustworthy candidates in political campaigns often use such deceptive communication strategies to trick voters into supporting them. Let's say that during Governor Smith's last term, her state lost 1 million jobs but gained 3 million new ones. Then she seeks another term in office and enters the election race. One of her opponents in that race subsequently begins a multimedia advertising campaign saying, during Governor Smith's term, the state lost 1 million jobs. That is indeed true, but at the same time, it is intentionally deceptive. A more honest statement from her opponent would have been, during Governor Smith's term, the state had a net gain of 2 million jobs. Advertisers sometimes use half-truths as well. Because it's illegal in many countries to openly make false claims about a product or service, some advertisers try to mislead you with the truth. An ad might consequently boast, 9 out of 10 doctors recommend yucky pills to cure nose pimples. This is also a factual statement, but one which deliberately fails to mention that only 10 doctors were asked about yucky pills, and 9 of these actually work for the Yucky Corporation. 45.
Have you ever noticed the different approaches people use to deal with problems? Some people, individualists, generally try to work through problems on their own. Other people, cooperators, tend to approach problem solving as a group matter. Each approach has positive and negative points. Individualists may often be the quickest to find an answer to a problem, and they tend to be willing to take responsibility. However, this approach is not perfect. They may be too committed to a particular position to be able to change their opinions. In this way, the individualist approach may result in difficulties later. Cooperators are valued as team members, in sports or school or work. They tend to be flexible enough to recognize the importance of other points of view when problems arise. This approach, however, can take a long time, which may lead to delays in solving problems. Such difficulties sometimes cannot be avoided with the cooperator's approach. We should learn to recognize the different approaches to dealing with problems. This knowledge can help us build smoother relations between people with different approaches to problem solving.
46.
In 1983, the Nobel Prize-winning economist Wassily Leontief highlighted the debate through a clever comparison of humans and horses. For many decades, horse labor appeared unaffected by technological change. Even as railroads replaced the stagecoach and the Conestoga wagon, the U.S. horse population grew seemingly without end. The animals were vital, not only on farms, but also in the country's rapidly growing urban centers. But then, with the introduction and spread of the powerful and efficient engine, the trend was rapidly reversed. As engines found their way into automobiles in the city and tractors in the countryside, horses became largely irrelevant. Then the question is whether a similar outcome is possible for human labor. Are autonomous machines and supercomputers indicating a coming wave of technological progress that will finally sweep humans out of the economy? For Leontief, the answer was yes. However, he missed a number of important points. Humans, fortunately, are not horses and remain an important part of the economy.
47.
Alfred Marshall, a British economist, in his foundational 1890 book, Principles of Economics, said, "Human wants and desires are countless in number and very various in kind. Ever since Marshall, people have linked unlimited wants to full employment. After all, who else but workers will be able to fulfill all those wants and desires? We humans are a deeply social species, and the desire for human connections carries over to our economic lives. We come together to appreciate human expression or ability when we attend plays and sporting events. Regular customers often visit particular restaurants, not only because of the food and drink, but because of the hospitality offered. In these cases, human interaction is central to the economic transaction, not incidental to it. Humans have economic wants that can be satisfied only by other humans, and that makes us deny that we will go the way of the horse.
48.
You are on your way to a concert. At an intersection, you encounter a group of people all staring at the sky. Without even thinking about it, you look upwards too. Why? Social proof. In the middle of the concert, when the soloist is giving an excellent performance, someone begins to clap, and suddenly the whole room joins in. You do too. Why? Social proof. After the concert, you go to the coat check to pick up your coat. You watch how the people in front of you place a coin on a plate, even though, officially, the service is included in the ticket price. What do? You probably leave a coin as well. Why? Social proof. Social proof, sometimes roughly termed the herd instinct, dictates that individuals feel they are behaving correctly when they act the same as other people. In other words, if a large number of people follow a certain idea, others will find this idea truer or better. And the more people who display a certain behavior, the more appropriate others will judge it. This is, of course, ridiculous. Social proof is the evil behind economic bubbles and stock market panic. It exists in fashion, management techniques, hobbies, religion, and diets. In some cases, it can even negatively affect whole cultures.
49.
A simple experiment carried out in the 1950s by legendary psychologist Solomon Asch shows how common sense is influenced by peer pressure. The tendency to want to act the same as the members of one social group. In Asch's experiment, a research participant is shown a line drawn on paper, and next to it 3 lines numbered 1, 2, and 3. One shorter, one longer, and one of the same length as the original one. The participant must indicate which of the 3 lines corresponds to the original one. If that participant is alone in the room, he gives correct answers. Unsurprising, because the task is really quite simple. Now 5 other people enter the room. They are all actors, a fact that the participant does not know. One after another, they give wrong answers, saying, Number 1, although it's very clear that number 3 is the correct answer. Then it is the participant's turn again. In 1/3 of cases, he will answer incorrectly to match the other people's responses. Why do we act like this?
50.
In the past, following others was a good survival strategy. Suppose that 50,000 years ago, you were traveling in the wild with your hunter-gatherer friends, and suddenly they all fled at the sight of an animal. What would you have done? Would you have remained still, wondering about what you were looking at? Was it a lion, or something that just looked like a lion but was, in fact, a harmless animal? No, you would have followed your friends. Later on, when you were safe, you could have reflected on what the lion had actually been. Those who acted differently from the group did not pass their genes on to the later generations. We are directly descended from those who copied the other's behavior. This pattern is so deeply rooted in us that we still use it today, even when it offers no survival advantage, which is most of the time. Only a few cases come to mind where social proof is of value. For example, if you find yourself hungry in a foreign city and don't know a good restaurant, it makes sense to pick the one that's full of local people. In other words, you copy the local people's behavior. Comedy and talk shows make use of social proof by inserting sounds of people laughing at key moments, encouraging the audience to laugh along.